Okay, video 2 for assessment and diagnosis, or diagnosis in particular. So we should be careful in jumping the gun on making a diagnosis, even though insurance companies want you to do that from session 1, and much of the time you can make a fairly accurate picture, get a good presentation from that person. I'm here to tell you in my clinical experience that it's better to use provisional diagnoses if you're not required to put them down in black and white. There's so much more you get from 2 or 3 sessions down the road that it's important to use, in my view, a provisional diagnosis. Provisional diagnosis means not completely confirmed, strongly suspected. So you assess someone, but you don't really have enough information. And often you just don't, not in one session, I don't think. So this is a strong assumption, or presumption, I should say, that a person has a particular diagnosis. And then you can just list them and put provisional, or even you could use what's called a rule out, which is you again strongly suspect it, but you're suggesting you should revisit it and go through a process to either rule in or rule out. Okay. Now there are culture-bound diagnoses that don't exist everywhere. We've talked about that, and these, I want to just name a few. One of which is the Dot syndrome in India. This has to do with loss of sexual potential. Koro symptoms. So Koro, which is Malaysian, and I believe, and it is again about receding sexual organs in the body. Amok, which I would hate, for those of you who are Star Trek fans, there was an original, from the original series on television in the 60s, there was an episode called Amok Time where Spock went kind of nuts. And Amok is, again, in Malaysia, and it's a violent outbursts precipitated by an insult and in men in Malaysia. We don't have that here. The closest we get is maybe intermittent explosive disorder. Okay, and there's all sorts of things. Ghost sickness in some Native American tribes, wherein there's a preoccupation with death, and those who have passed with bad dreams and fainting and appetite loss and hallucinations and so on. So there's a long list of these sorts of things. We have to pay honor and homage to them because different cultures see the world differently. Yeah, they do. So let's talk a little bit about genetics and psychopathology. What are the approximate heritabilities of a few diagnoses? We have some. We should list these in ranges, but we have some numbers that we'd like to just visit. One of these is autism, which is thought to be a 90% heritability. Now, it doesn't mean that. What that means is that not 100% is at the genetic level for its production, for its origin. That means there's something in the environment that triggers it. We don't know what it is. We don't know why it's increasing in prevalence either. Schizophrenia has 80%, bipolar disorder 80%, ADHD is 70%. So you move down for intelligence. The variation in intelligence scores is about 60%, 60% due to heritability. Major depression is around 40%. General anxiety is about 30%. Generalized anxiety about 30%. So those are some interesting numbers. And each way you can see none of it's 100%, and down around, say, major depression 40%. That means there's the variation in score in that diagnosis and in its occurrence is related to environmental stuff. And this goes back to the way we have to study things. We have to be assuming that there's both a heredity issue, okay, and a cultural issue. Yeah. And so it's in our genes and in our culture and at all levels of culture, micro, macro, and so on. Okay? If you look at monozygotic twins or identical twins, then what you tend to see is that there are many, many, many things, even at the micro-behavioral level, that are consistent among monozygotic twins that have been raised apart. It's really interesting. Take two twins that are genetically clones and see how many things they share that are not just the way they look, but what they do for a living and so on and so forth. What the things they buy, the kind of song, music they like. You see remarkable coincidence, remarkable. So some things that we think are strictly environmentally induced may not be, and indeed are not. Many things are, but many things are not. Okay. And so that's the one thing on classification, and then we're going to move into true assessment. Okay? All right. Bye.